You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes.
All right, I've got a pitch. It's a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
It's R-rated.
I'm listening.
There's a fourth wall breaking hero,
On board. Say more.
and constant reminders that we live in end stage capitalism.
Oh, you ruined it. I have some notes. Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing Deadpool & Wolverine.
Am I the only one who
Snick,
keeps wanting to say Deadpool v. Wolverine like it's Batman v. Superman? Every time I've gone to say, hey, I saw Deadpool and Wolverine, my brain is trying to force my mouth to throw that V in there.
That's a good bit. I like it.
I don't want to elongate this bit too much, but I agree with you, Scott, that for some reason in my head, it's like a record skip every time I try and read the title. I don't know why. It just doesn't flow off the tongue very easily. I don't know.
This film, of course, was released last weekend, at least at the time of recording, released on July 25th. It was directed by Sean Levy. It was written by Ryan Reynolds, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, Zeb Wells, and Sean Levy, and is based on the Marvel Comics characters. We all hit the theaters for this one, and we figured strike while the iron's hot. Arguably the biggest movie of the summer, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
We all saw it within 5 or 6 days of it opening. So we're talking Deadpool x Wolverine.
This is about a 50% Marvel podcast, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're big movies, and they're often kind of middling. So they're really like they pay the bills and keep the lights on around here.
Yeah,
more
much
often
like
than
we really can't slag on Marvel and Disney for kind of giving people what they want, because that's also sort of our model. Like, the numbers don't lie. We look back on the downloads and listeners of any given episode, and like Thor: Love and Thunder double the number of listeners than say Cabinet of Dr.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
So,
though I do like going back and looking at those classics. We should definitely keep doing that from time to time.
We did Twister last week. We keep it. We bounce. It's usually we try to. I'm gonna let you see how the sausage is made here, listeners.
Uh-oh.
We tend to go an old one, a current one, a big blockbuster superhero movie, an older one, a current one, big blockbuster superhero movie. Tends to be the rotation.
One for us and two for the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of rotation, Twister was picked specifically because Twisters just came out too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like what Greg said, one for us, two for the algorithm. Of course, the cast of this film: Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson, Deadpool; Hugh Jackman as Logan/Wolverine; Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova; Matthew McFadden as Mr. Paradox; Daphne Keane as Laura or X-23; Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan; Morena Baccarin as Vanessa; Rob Delaney as Peter; Leslie Uggams as Blind Al; and this is actually where I'm going to just stop now and remind folks that this is going to be a spoiler-full episode. We are going to talk about this movie as if you have seen it. So if you do not want to have anything spoiled, stop listening now. Go back and listen to our Dr. Caligari episode because I'm going to continue reading the cast, which includes some pretty exciting cameos. So You can switch over to your local radio in 3, 2, 1. Jennifer Garner as Elektra, Wesley Snipes as Blade, Channing Tatum as Gambit, and Chris Evans as Johnny Storm.
Yeah, when Wesley Snipes walked on screen, I shouted "Holy shit!" out loud in the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some surprising and fun cameos, and that's not even all of them. That's just probably the biggest ones.
Correct.
Like, surprised to see Chris Evans there, but you're like, okay, sure, why not? But then when he goes that was the one that like genuinely tickled me, where I'm like, oh, we're having some fun.
Yeah.
This movie, more than being a way to weld Deadpool into the Marvel universe, this movie almost feels like kind of almost heartfelt swan song to the Fox run of Marvel films.
At least the Fox era of Marvel films.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because I had some of the sort of rumblings I had heard was that this was going to be like Deadpool, kills the X-Men universe and the Fox universe. And it really is much more Deadpool honors the Fox universe.
Kind of,
which
that's
is even
more
better
what
than
he
what I
does.
guessed. My guess was going to be Deadpool retcons Kang and all the other, muck that the MCU finds itself in right now. So for better or for worse, the MCU still a train wreck, still a complicated web of nonsense. But at least Elektra and Blade, they've been put to bed properly.
Yeah.
Or have they? Because at the end, he does ask the TVA to like help out the people who helped him in the void, and that would include them. So maybe that leaves the door open. Yeah, that leaves the door open.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to keep that door open for eventual billion-dollar sequels. And considering how well this movie is doing at the box office, I would suggest that that's quite likely. Maybe not for a few years yet, but like they'll get around to it.
In broad strokes, how did you guys feel about this one? Just general review, takeaway, enthusiasm, feelings.
It's fine. That may be kind of damning it with faint praise because I know that there were very high expectations for it, but I thought it was fairly funny. It had some good action set pieces. It's like a very popcorny movie. Like I think I gave it 3 stars out of 5. So like very watchable, quite enjoyable, but I mean, I recognize it's going to slide over my brain. So
it's going to go down smooth.
Yeah. It's not something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I kind of feel that way about the other Deadpool movies too, because I, for the life of me, could not remember what had happened to Marina Baccarin's character in the second Deadpool. Like when she was there, I was like, I thought she was dead. I didn't remember at all. I had a good time. As someone who's quite cynical about the Marvel universe, it was fun. I laughed. There was some good action sequences, especially the car fight, which was well put together and very funny. And generally, it kept me engaged throughout. It was a bit too long, and I because it's a comedy. That's why I felt like generally I feel like comedies about 90 minutes is your port of call. Going beyond that, you start to overstay your welcome a little bit, and that's where I felt when we got towards the climax. I was just like, all right, let's get this over with. And then Deadpool himself looks at the camera and tells you, like, don't worry, we're coming the home stretch. And I was like, that is an interesting fourth wall break, but also kind of reminds me that I'm wishing this was over.
Yeah, it really, because they jump through the portal, they go home, and then they have a big fight in the streets of home, and then they've still got to stop her from taking the time ripper. And you're like, yeah, there's a lot of plot lines to shore up here. And I thought, very strange that they draw attention to the fact that it's over 2 hours and you're probably like, so. I had a good time with it as well. It was very funny. There was a lot of genuinely good jokes, and I found a lot of the stuff that was like little digs at Marvel and Fox and the current state of Hollywood and you know, the MCU and that sort of, I heard it referred to as fifth wall breaking, like not just him looking at the camera and acknowledging he's in a story, but acknowledging, you know, metatextual facts about what company owns what property and who played who in what movie. For the most part, those jokes were still jokes. They weren't just references or like, haha, that's a thing we all know, or that's a little in joke. You know, they were genuinely structured as jokes. And so that was good that it wasn't just references for the sake of references, though there was some of that. Yeah, pretty funny, pretty entertaining, but also probably pretty forgettable. I was pretty lukewarm on Deadpool 2. I genuinely loved the first one. I thought it's one of the best superhero Marvel movies, just possibly even movies of the last, you know, popcorn blockbuster movies of the last 10, 20 years.
Sure.
And then the second one, it didn't do it for me. I found it really cringy. And so that the fact that this one had a lot more jokes and genuine laughs than Deadpool 2 was okay with me. Yeah.
I think the only other thing that I found maybe off-putting about it a little bit was some of the production design was a little, I don't know, boring. I mean, I recognize that they're in a void and the void's got to look a certain way, but there was very long stretches of the movie being extremely gray and not really that much fun to look at.
What's interesting about that is they wanted to do this Mad Max pastiche, but it didn't look nearly as good as Mad Max.
No.
And I don't know, I'm assuming, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask for the sake of our listeners. Greg, did you watch Loki season 1?
No,
of course you didn't. The Void is from Loki season 1, and in Loki, it looks way different than this, and it's awesome. It's like a visual sort of love letter, or like it apes on a lot of the style of I'm gonna screw it up. I put myself in the spot. Russian filmmaker made a movie called Stalker. Tarkovsky. The whole point of The Void, it looks like a Tarkovsky film, specifically Stalker, and it's much more interesting visually in Loki. It's kind of grassier. There's like weird random junk sitting around. That's kind of why the 20th Century Fox logo was like sticking out of the ground.
Right.
Because it's where junk from the multiverse gets dumped. And so it was kind of a drag that, they made it so gray and bland when the first time we saw The Void, it was weird and green. But before we get too far into it, let's go to the plot summary and trailer.
I know I turn everything into a joke, but I care. Or I want to use that for something important. I waited a long time for this team up. In my world, you're well regarded. You were an X-Man. Fuck that, you were the X-Man. The Wolverine. He's a hero in my world.
Yeah, well, he ain't shit in mine. Scott used to beg me to wear this suit. So did Storm, Beast. But I couldn't have him thinking I wanted to be there. And it was too late.
It's only 9 people, but my entire world is right here in this picture. And I have no idea how to save it alone, but you know how to save it.
Deadpool, the merc with the mouth, gets his biggest job yet, helping the Walt Disney Corporation shore up the canon of the many storylines they inherited from 20th Century Fox and breathe new enthusiasm into Marvel Studios' cinematic offerings. It's such an important task that it will require help, so Deadpool must team up with the only superhero with both ties to Fox and the unwavering love and support of audiences of all ages, the Wolverine. Too bad all he can find is the quote-unquote worst Wolverine, a version of Logan responsible for turning his timeline's humans against the X-Men and currently drinking himself to death. After exchanging blows and quips with each other, the two heroes find enough common ground to answer the call to adventure. That common ground is, of course, extreme marketability. Together, Wade and Logan must protect Wade's timeline from TVA pruning, help forgotten heroes earn their endings, sell some collectible popcorn buckets, and stop the evil Cassandra Nova from destroying everything in the multiverse except the Void, as seen in Loki Season 1. LFG.
If I may, I actually want to skip to one of our listener comments because I think it's a really relevant place to start this conversation.
Sure.
So just for setup's sake, the movie begins with Wade Wilson trying to live a normal life and then happens to, I can't even remember now how he runs into the TVA, but essentially multiverse shenanigans ensue and the TVA tells him that his universe is in danger because is it Wade Wilson himself that's the anchor being, right?
No,
in
fact, it's very explicit that he's not.
He's not, but it is also not particularly. I know what you're trying to get at, and it's not well explained. But his universe has lost their anchor being. I almost said anchor baby. Anchor being Wolverine.
Yeah.
Oh,
specifically,
right.
Specifically, the implication is that Logan, the movie, takes place in Deadpool's same universe, and that Wolverine's death is causing his universe's slow disintegration.
Right. Yeah. And so essentially the TVA has marked his universe for destruction, introducing this whole concept of anchor beings. So, friend of the show, Josh Scar, had commented that a better explanation of anchor beings is needed. The concept is intentionally vague, but doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. Does a universe begin when an anchor being is made? When does that start? Why does it take thousands of years for a universe to die after an anchor being dies? Does an anchor universe begin in anticipation of an anchor being? Is it meta commentary on comic book movies / franchises? Need a better, less vague explanation or punchline for how and why anchor beings affect their universe.
Agreed. And over and above that, not only does the anchor being thing kind of make no sense and beg all the questions Josh posits here, but also why Deadpool is special and gets to leave his dying universe and go be in the sacred timeline, aka 616, aka the MCU. Especially when it's presented as like they need his help. I'm doing air quotes. And he can be important. But Mr. Paradox doesn't really explain what they need him for or why he gets to go other than that he's special.
Yeah.
Almost like, fictional code for like, you're the only marketable thing left in that universe and we want you in the MCU with Thor. So, agreed.
Yeah, Josh has like all those questions. I think it's fine in a comedy to have pretty silly plot beats, and I'm not necessarily going to criticize it too much for this being kind of wonky. But generally speaking, even in a comedy, like when you introduce concepts that beg the audience to ask all these types of questions, like it doesn't serve the rest of your plot very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially because there were already multiple Marvel movies deep into multiversal, alternate reality, alternate timeline shenanigans, adding this, like we've already got the concept of the TVA, this out of time organization that governs timelines. We've already got, Tobey Maguire meeting Tom Holland. now we've got this concept of an anchor being. Who's the anchor being of the MCU? Is that why they brought Robert Downey Jr. back to be Doom? Because Iron Man's dead and that's gonna wither on the vine? They didn't, there's already so much material there. They didn't need to add this extra stupid concept.
Well, yeah. And even further to that, like, what happens to Worst Wolverine's timeline if he gets plucked out of it? Is he the anchor being there? How is him being inserted into Wade's timeline going to add a new anchor being? Like, it doesn't hold up in any way to any scrutiny. It's just a hand-wavy plot MacGuffin, and it could have been handled better. And
my main fix, I'm very excited to share it, cleans up this whole anchor baby nonsense. I know it's anchor being. Whole anchor being nonsense in what I'm pretty pleased with myself, a pretty elegant and deft solution that just drops this entirely. So I'm excited to get to that. But there's a bunch of other movie to review.
Yeah. I kind of had a bit of beef with the end of the movie. I know that we were talking about how the movie is too long, and I do agree it could have been tighter. But there still felt like something missing to me, and that was all of Wade's friends who help him throughout the first two films are just kind of there in the background for a couple scenes in this film, and that feels like such wasted potential. I really feel like X-Force, his superhero team, should have been around to help him out in the final fight, especially against an army of other Deadpools. Like, how fun would that have been to have his friends gleefully murdering other alt versions of him and him just be like, this is kind of weird. I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity.
Or even just more moments of him interacting with them in a way that shows why they're so special and important, other than one birthday party.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like that was
turns 9 people into one agency-less damsel in distress.
Yeah, it really felt like a missed opportunity, especially when they end up back in his universe and there's an existential threat, and then his super team friends don't show up, except for Peter, don't show up to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's Domino? Where's
Colossus? Yeah.
Colossus, yeah.
Like, Colossus is basically a paladin. He would have shown up to the fight.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's some pretty easy places to cut for time. I would say that the first fight between Wolverine and Deadpool can lift right out pretty simply. Largely because we've already kind of been through a montage of all these different Wolverines as he's trying to find the right one, and then for some reason picks the worst one. And at that point, we don't know really anything about what this particular Wolverine is all about. So seeing them go at it doesn't really have a lot of emotional punch to it, but it does in the car fight scene, because at that point they've been at each other's throats arguing for quite some time, and I actually think it would have been better to wait for that fight to to occur, like in the car, and then I just feel like it would be even funnier to have like this fight that fans have been waiting ages and ages for to take place in a car, and then that's all they get. Like, it's just like a little bit of a prank on Marvel fans. I think would be hilarious.
I will say I did like that they pitted two adversaries against one another who could really rip into each other without any lasting consequence. It made, because they both have superhuman healing factors and they're both wielding bladed weapons, the fights could get like visceral, but they're both going to be fine. Like, they could cripple each other and just be better in a couple minutes.
It's counterintuitive. It seems like it would make the fight have no stakes, but it's just genuinely fun to see. Like,
it just makes it. Yeah.
It's John Wick versus John Wick instead of John Wick versus 1,000 guys. Like,
and it somehow makes it more fun. And the beauty of it is it turns into a great punchline later on when they fight the army of alt Deadpools, and they're like, "Yay, we won!" And then they all start getting back up and regenerating, and they're like, "Oh no, we're doomed."
Yeah, and there's a great setup with that, right? Because I thought that was brilliant that the good pool, or what did they call him? Was a good pool?
Nice pool.
Nice pool.
Nice
right?
pool.
he's the one Deadpool that doesn't have regenerative powers, and Deadpool uses them as a shield against all the other Deadpools that are attacking him. And so because that happens first and he dies, it in your brain, like, even though you know that all these Deadpools should have regenerative powers, it makes you wonder if the movie is just going to forget about that. So it's like, it's a nice setup to get then the reverse after that scene is over. So it was quite well done.
The one Deadpool who is there to help them gets used as a human shield and dies miserably, and all of the ones who are there to kill him are perfectly fine.
Beyond the initial shock value of seeing the cameos in that moment, how do you guys feel that first sort of like back half of the first act, most of the second act stuff in fiction, use of Elektra, Blade, Gambit, but also all the old X-Men villains like Juggernaut and Toad? Did that work for you? Did that, how like, was it just the shock of the cameo, or do you feel like it was a pretty good use of those characters in the fiction?
I kind of liked it, actually. I dug seeing all of the old Brotherhood mutants back for like a final hurrah, and like played by their original actors. I kind of enjoyed seeing like the little cameos from the other X-Men villains who they threw in there, like Lady Deathstrike and stuff. It was kind of fun. As I said, it was a nice little swan song to these movies in a way, which never really got an opportunity. They even lampshade it when they're like, we never got an ending, and this is an opportunity for us to finally get an ending. And I kind of was like down for that. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun way to
makes more sense and worked better for me than like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield showing up. Like, it was just sort of like, oh, all of these misfit toys, all of these discarded ideas. If anything, I kind of almost wish they went a little harder with it. I would have loved to have seen, 1980s Punisher, like I think it's Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
Sure. And the Roger Corman Fantastic Fours, the weird Japanese Spider-Man with his own TV show from the 70s and a Gundam. But I truly lost it when he's like, he's gonna say it. And he thinks it's going to be Avengers Assembly, goes, flame on. I was like, he's here as Johnny Storm. I shouldn't be so easily amused, but that was a genuine surprise. And using that character in that way was just really fun. I loved the Misfit Toys vibe. It was,
And there again with Johnny Storm, they did an excellent job of setting up their punchline, because Johnny Storm is like covered in like a shawl or something. I don't know. He's got like some sort of like burlap blanket going over him.
Apocalypse shawl.
But they kind of cheat a little bit, because you can kind of see like red in his uniform, and then when he takes it off, he's just in his Fantastic Four outfit. So I mean, good on them. I mean, sure, they cheated a little bit, but they really sold it, and then you're genuinely surprised. Because I was kind of like, I was so sold on it, I was like, oh, I don't want to see Captain America. That sucks. And then he wasn't. I was like, hey, this is great.
I was expecting it to be some kind of like, punished Captain America, some like alternate,
right,
mustache cap or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I legit agree with Liam, though. I think they almost could have done more, like background cameos during that whole bit. Both for good guys and for bad guys. I think this would have been a great time for them to just dump out the box of action figures and see who was there, and just smash them all together for fun. And that really, the fight scene at Cassandra Nova's dead giant man hideout was very much that. It was just like the excitement of smashing your action figures together. It was cool to watch. You got to see like Wesley Snipes' Blade in action again. You got to see the Jennifer Garner Elektra in action again. You got to see Channing Tatum doing Gambit stuff. That was just fun.
I think what you're thinking of, Liam, is something more akin to the chase sequence from Across the Spider-Verse in Spider-Man 2099's universe, where like it's just like you just get all these like little references to all sorts of different versions, and like really imaginative ones that may not have existed elsewhere and things like that. I do think that was fun, and to their credit, I mean, they kind of did that with Deadpool at the end with all these different versions of him. But
they also kind of did it with his search for the right Wolverine, because a lot of those Wolverine, all those Wolverines are actual Wolverine variants from the comics, right?
Yeah. I get what they were doing, trying to like bring home all the Fox stuff. So I guess I kind of appreciate it on that level.
Those bumpers.
But you're right. It would have been fun to see all that stuff, but I don't know what the budget of this movie was, but maybe they were stretching their limits.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't complaining. I was just like, oh, that was such a fun bit seeing all of these Misfit toys. Ooh, wouldn't it have been fun if they truly got all of them, if they went, pulled out all the stops. So, I had another question for you guys about the stakes of this movie, specifically the emotional stakes. Did they work for you? And this is sort of a leading question into something I want to talk about that's been bugging me since I watched it, but the role sincerity played in this very campy, silly meta comedy. So,
This is something I wanted to actually mention earlier, but never found a way to slip in, because Greg, you had mentioned the movie feels long in places. And I think one of the reasons that it feels long in places is because for a movie that's meant to be meta and funny, it's very self-serious in places. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the places where it is dragging the most, especially like early on with Wade doing the weird car dealership stuff and like, nope, I'm going to be, I'm just having a regular life now. This is who I am. I'm done being a superhero. That weird midlife pathos that he was having didn't really work with the rest of the film.
Or the Deadpool we've met in 2 previous movies.
Yeah. And I think that it's fine for Wolverine to have that. I think Hugh Jackman did great, bringing some real like, pain to this version of Wolverine, and has a genuinely touching scene where he's explaining to X-23 what's his deal. But like Deadpool doesn't need to have that same thing going for him.
He also, if you think about it, he has 3 motivations, or like 2.5. There's this idea that he's got to protect his universe so that he can keep his 9 friends alive, or whatever many people are in that picture. But also, he really wants to be an Avenger. He wants to matter. Mm-hmm. And it matters to Vanessa that he matters. Yeah. In fact, their relationship hinges on it. And I think, honestly, I need to protect my timeline from being pruned, because everything I care about is in that timeline.
That's where I keep my stuff.
Tick, like, that's where I keep my stuff. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Don't blow up the earth. That's where I keep my stuff. That's all you need. He doesn't need to be on the outs with Vanessa, and this like need to be an Avenger doesn't really, it's a hat on a hat at best.
Yeah. And the weird thing is he could legitimately seek out Wolverine to save his world for purely selfish reasons. And Wolverine could call him out on that midway through the movie. And that could give him a moment of self-examination and just turn him into a more heroic person without all that other baggage on top of it. Mm-hmm. Like with Wolverine being like,
trying to tell him,
yeah, you're doing this for the wrong reason, bub. Like, take it from a guy who wrecked everything. You're doing this for the wrong reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with all of that. I think it's pretty clear that Deadpool's motivation and an arc such as it is doesn't super work. Wolverine's is simple and I think largely effective. Maybe because Hugh Jackman is an excellent actor and genuinely goes hard on some of his dramatic scenes. And
you know what? Simple can work.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, especially in a comedy. I think that comedy action movie, no less. Like it's very, very good to keep things simple so that you can get to all the fun stuff, and that's what they did with Wolverine. But then somehow overcomplicated things with Deadpool. And miss the mark.
I will say, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds have very easy chemistry with one another. Mm-hmm. The bromance in the movie is real. I bought the weird, aggressive friction and affection that the two of them had for one another, and everyone who's there is having fun. Like,
Yeah.
holy crap. Every single member of that cast looks like they're just having the time of their life being there.
Mhm.
And that does a lot. That helps carry a lot of this movie, where it's like everybody's just having a great time. Even Wesley Snipes looks like he's having a good time.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
saying something.
And Emma Corrin, they are just crushing it.
Yeah.
As the
100%.
villain in this movie. I love the Cassandra Nova character. I really love the effect of them putting the fingers through the head
Yes.
to manipulate their
Like
brain.
dragging them too. Yeah.
It was there was some spotty special effects in this movie, but that one genuinely tickled me quite a bit.
Yeah.
So the reason I brought up sincerity, and I don't want to get too hung up on this, especially because we're coming up on halfway mark, but there's been something that has been bothering me since I got out of the movie. And I want to air it here, and I want your guys' take in it. That's why I brought up the sincerity of this film and what Scott was saying about the times where it takes itself too seriously. The funniest part of the movie to me, the part where I laughed the hardest, I found out when I got home and started talking to some of my friends that I play video games with online, reading some Letterboxd reviews. There was a part of the movie that I was laughing. I thought I was laughing with it, but turns out I was laughing at it.
Uh-oh.
And normally that's kind of a funny, like, ha ha ha, oh wait, you're serious moment. Like, how often does that happen in real life? But when it was my favorite joke in the whole movie, or my favorite bit in the whole movie, it was really disappointing. So I want to see if you guys had the same read on this as I did. The credits roll, and we get behind the scenes footage from the Fantastic Four, Blade, Elektra, all the X-Men movies, all the Wolverine movies, the time he was Deadpool. We get clips from press junkets, and it's all set to Time of Your Life brackets, or Good Riddance brackets, Time of Your Life by Green Day. And I was in tears. And I'm like, that's so funny. Like, we're literally seeing Michael Chiklis get thing makeup as the, second only to Angel by Sarah McLachlan, like the lamest sad funeral song. And I was belly laughing because I thought it was ironic. I thought it was an absurd thing to put at the end of the movie, to put clips from the press junket for the Wolverine set to sad music 20 years later at the end of a Deadpool movie. And I was doubled over with laughter. And then I got home and a bunch of people were like, yeah, I thought it was really touching to see that send off of all those characters, right? Like, I saw someone, a Letterboxd review, be like, ooh, and those credits, that was real emotional manipulation, really got me. Seeing all that behind the scenes stuff one last time truly touched me. And I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I thought that was hilarious and absurd and ironic, and it turns out it was genuine. So how did that hit for you guys? Even if you weren't moved by it, did you at least take it seriously? Like, did you think it was a genuine send-off?
Yeah, I think I read it more as genuine than anything. In the context of everything that was going on in the movie, and it clearly being sort of a button-up for that particular series of movies. It didn't necessarily strike me as odd that's where they went. I didn't think that they were trying to move anybody to tears or anything like that. I just felt like, here's some fun things we can roll the credits to. Yeah. Like it wasn't, I didn't read it as a joke at all. Yeah.
I did read it as a joke, but I also read it as sincere. Like, I'm weirdly down the middle on this one, because on the one hand, it is them saying a farewell to this era of films, but at the same time, they're doing it in a funny way. Like, I couldn't help but also read it as, this is a funny way to do that. And I was also smiling through it. So like, I kind of see both sides.
Yeah. And I think that was what threw me, was how many people read it as genuine and sincere. And my argument for, like, I can see what Greg is saying. Like, absolutely, it is. The whole movie was this send off to the Fox films. But this movie starts with them literally and figuratively desecrating the ending of Logan. So in my mind, I'm like, well, if it's going to start with zero reverence given to the serious stuff that came before it, why would it end on a sincere, genuine note? But apparently I'm in the minority, or at best, Scott, a couple other people I talked to when I felt like I was on crazy pills said what you said, Scott, where it's like, I think they're kind of trying to have it both ways.
I think they were kind of trying to have it both ways. Yeah.
So it was just disappointing to have like the funniest part of the whole movie for me everyone be like, no, that was serious. That was a nice goodbye.
Liam, why are you laughing at this funeral?
To the point even Amanda elbowed me and elbowed me the way you would laugh. You would elbow someone laughing at a funeral, and I didn't understand why. So cool. Anyway, I just need to get that off my chest that if anyone was I don't want to like shame anyone. If you really had fondness for, X-Men Origins Wolverine behind the scenes footage, great.
Yeah,
I guess,
I think that was
seeing Michael Chiklis get thinged up to time of your life is absurd. Flat out.
I mean, I did find that funny that they were featuring some of the movies that were genuinely terrible, like
press junket clips.
Yeah, even Josh Trank's A Fantastic Four got in there a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah.
And apparently the movie, The Fall Guy, ends with like a montage like that is genuine and earned and makes sense at the end of Fall Guy, where they're like, oh, look at all the stunt performers. What a great craft stunt performing is. And so I really did read this as like a send up of that kind of end of movie montage. And yeah, you can, art. That's the great thing about art. You can read it any way you want.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, if you found it funny, more power to you.
Thank you for letting me get that off my chest, because I watched the movie last night and I have felt like I said, like I was in the Twilight Zone all day. Well, let's say we get to our fixes for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Greetings, armchair screenwriters.
If you live in Edmonton, Alberta, or will be visiting the city between the weeks of August 15th to the 25th, 2024, Scott and I have some really exciting projects we want to share with you.
Yeah, so Liam and I are both part of live theatrical productions going on as part of the Edmonton International Fringe Theatre Festival.
My theater company, Sorry Not Sorry Improv, is presenting YEG D&D. It's a Dungeons & Dragons improv show. We give giant 20-sided dice to the audience to roll, and the success or failures of those rolls determine the direction of a hilarious fantasy adventure. We do stage combat, sing songs, and we'll be following the same party of adventurers across all 8 shows. It's even appropriate for all ages, so bring your kids.
I know that you're a very good improviser. How many years have you been doing YEG D&D at Fringe?
Scott, this is our 12th year at the festival, and I've been part of it for every summer since its inception. This is the first time I will be Dungeon Master for YEG D&D at the Fringe, so I'm just super excited to be in that capacity this year. You can learn more at sorrynotsorry.ca or follow us on Instagram at SNSYEG.
William, I am excited to tell you about my play, Naked Lady. I adapted it from the 1934 short story by Mindret Lord, and it is a story of love, hate, art, and dark magic. Will there be an actual naked lady in the show? I couldn't possibly say. You'll have to come and see it to find out.
That's super cool that you wrote a whole dang play. Very impressive and excited to see it. But you also have a role in the show as well, right?
I certainly do, because that way we keep the shares down. So if you want to check out my award-nominated scriptwriting bona fides and my not award-nominated acting chops, you can check out Naked Lady or check us out on Instagram at St. Maggie Productions.
And wouldn't you know it, there are like 50 plus venues participating in the festival. Both of our shows, out of sheer coincidence, can be found at the same one. We're in Sugar Swing Ballroom at 10019 80th Ave in Edmonton.
Tickets for YEG D&D and Naked Lady, as well as all of the other wonderful productions going on at the Edmonton Fringe, are right now on sale at fringetheater.ca.
See you there. We're back. We're talking Deadpool and Wolverine. Do you guys have any fixes you want to start off with? I've got first act fixes, but I want to hear what you have.
I kind of feel like because you have big first act fixes that also fix the anchor being thing, maybe you should go first and we should build off of that.
Sure. I'll try to keep this tight. Yeah, the anchor being thing doesn't make a lick of sense, but we do need to find a way to get both Deadpool and some Wolverine together and to have beef with the TVA. That's really all that needs to be established in that first act, is that this Mr. Paradox of the TVA is indiscriminately and ruthlessly pruning timelines, and Deadpool has a problem with that, and he's got a Wolverine to help him. So you just drop the anchor being thing entirely, and instead we have a Deadpool who is surrounded by love. It's a couple years after Deadpool 2. He's got all of his people that he cares about around him, and he gets hauled off by the TVA for the time crimes that he committed in Deadpool 2. Because if you recall, in Deadpool 2, he, especially during the end credits, like goes and dicks around with the timeline because Cable gave him that. Scott?
I was going to agree with you. They even bring that up in the movie where he's like,
go,
oh
yeah,
God,
yeah,
am I in
doesn't
trouble? Am I in trouble? And they're like, nah, it's fine.
No, instead you're special and we want you in 616 while we prune your timeline. You've already got a reason for Deadpool time criminal to interact with the TVA.
Yeah.
But he does, and also you could have, there is a version of Wolverine, you could argue, also responsible for time crimes.
The Age of Apocalypse one, right?
Age of Apocalypse, or I actually haven't seen Age of Apocalypse, so I was thinking Days of Future Past, but if Age of the Apocalypse has time crimes in it as well.
I think I got those mixed up. I think you're talking about the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, Days of Future Past, where Wolverine goes back in time and digs around. So while Deadpool is walking around the TVA, and whether that is he's there doing time community service or he's there doing actual hard time, he's there to be punished and escaped, doesn't really matter. It's just a reason to get him into the TVA. He meets a version of Wolverine who basically, if you remember in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, there's like a world where Strange failed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is a version of Wolverine who failed where the version of Wolverine succeeded in Days of Future Past.
Okay.
It's the Wolverine who fucked up his timeline in Days of Future Past and didn't succeed. And now not only is his timeline ruined, we don't get the happy ending of Days of Future Past, but he is also in shit with the TVA. And now you've got a Wolverine and a Deadpool who are both time criminals at the TVA. They witness Mr. Paradox ruthlessly pruning, the failed Days of Future Past timeline. Maybe he's pruning other, old Marvel movie timelines really indiscriminately, using his Time Ripper. Maybe he demonstrates his power in the first act by being, look what the Time Ripper can do, and destroys the failed Days of Future Past timeline. And then we learn that Deadpool's timeline is next on the chopping block. And Deadpool goes, whoa, you can't do that. That's where I keep all my stuff. That's where all the people I care about live. Punches him, steals his thing, grabs his new buddy, punished Wolverine, and off they go. And the rest of the movie can more or less continue as normal.
They try to stop him, and then they get sent to the void for trying to stop him. Yeah. I will, just to go back a little bit, I like the idea of Deadpool being forced to do time community service just because that's funny.
It is funny. And it's because what I'm pitching though does mean you lose the whole thing where he goes and visits Happy Hogan in 616, which I don't know if you guys realize was explained quite poorly in the movie. The Deadpool that goes and talks to Happy Hogan and the Deadpool that works at a car dealership, even though those are different universes, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
They don't explain it well in the movie, but that's what happens is he like leaves his universe to go ask if he can be an Avenger. He gets told no, and he goes back to his own universe with his tail between his legs. We lose that. We also lose him running around trying to find a Wolverine, and we lose the fight with with Logan's adamantium corpse where he's like dancing to the Backstreet Boys and killing all the TVA guys. Because we lose those, we can make up for some of that multiverse fun by having him do time community service, TVA community service. Perhaps even, and this is something you said earlier, Scott, and I went, ooh, ding, 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 ding. I can use this. Maybe he has been hired by, not hired, but for his community service, he's helping Paradox prune timelines indiscriminately.
Until he realizes that his is next up on the chopping block.
Exactly. And then Wolverine can be like, oh, it was all well and good when it was my timeline, Roger Corman Fantastic Four timeline, what have you. But now it's yours, and now you want to grow a backbone? Fuck you, pal.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like Deadpool having the villain realization there. He's bought into Mr. Paradox's whole "this is a merciful" thing.
Yeah.
BS, and then Wolverine is the one to be like, no, you're actually the bad guy here. And Wade, who's had a hero's journey in the last 2 movies and thinks of himself now as a hero and maybe wants to join the Avengers someday, has to reckon with that. I kind of like that. And also it gives a real good reason for the two of them to rip into each other in that Honda Odyssey.
And gives a real reason for the two of them to be at the TVA and need to escape to save the timeline that has nothing to do with anchor beings.
There you go. I like it. That's a real clean fix, actually.
I think there's also an opportunity there to have some tension between Wade and Vanessa, just because he, she might clock that what he's doing for the TVA. It would also be interesting. If he was just like, if he was still a merc. And he was just hired by them, right? To do, he wasn't necessarily in trouble. He just happened to he got hired on by them because of his shenanigans, and that put him on their radar. And he was like, well, you can do some stuff for us, and we'll pay you good. And then there can be some tension between Vanessa and Wade, and that way you give Marina Baccarin something to do.
That's great.
And
like I said at the top of this, it doesn't really matter the reason. He did time crimes in Deadpool 2. Now he's at the TVA.
You guys said it earlier. You said it in the first half that it kind of feels like Vanessa needs Wade to be an Avenger, and I don't think, I don't know if that's necessarily what they meant for us to feel, but you can interpret it that way, and it kind of does that character dirty, because I think she's kind of my reading of her as being more of the moral core of the Deadpool series.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree. I think what she wants is for him to be his best self, and he's going through a midlife crisis, and she even says you missed on one and then you gave up, and the fact that he gave up is what actually she has a problem with. He's misread that because he's an idiot as I need to be a big A-list superhero to win her back, but all she wants is for him to just grow his spine back and be himself again, and have regain his confidence. So I think that's a closer reading to what's going on, but I still think that it's unnecessary, and I like where you're going with this, Greg. Also, it adds additional tension in the second act when he's in the void. If a lot of the misfit toys that he's encountering in the void are people from timelines he pruned.
Yes.
So they have beef with him, and they have reason not to trust him at first.
Yeah. Then you could, wouldn't this be fun? You could potentially have a big ass fight between him, Elektra, Blade, and Gambit.
That's instead of that first fight under the 20th Century Fox logo with him and Wolverine, it's him in a recently woken up drunk in TVA prison for time crimes for fucking up his Days of Future Past world, Wolverine versus those guys before they find a common enemy in Cassandra Nova.
Right. Yeah.
Dig it. Great.
Yeah, I like that.
I riffed on that a little more, but I sort of everything else I have written in regards to that change is at best a lateral move. So maybe I'll for now at least leave it at that. But that was my fix for the anchor being thing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty smooth, and I hate to lose. I do love the bone sequence quite a bit. So that one would be tough.
Well, then I'll tell you how I fix it. That was one where I'm I don't need to get in, but if you do love the bone one, so now that one of those first times where they're oh, you want to prune my timeline? Fuck you. And he punches him and runs away with his time machine. There's a bit of a chase through the multiverse, with TVA guys on his ass, and either him and his new, failed Days of Future Past, Wolverine end up at the burial site of Logan, perhaps even, failed Days of Future Past Wolverine is like looking at his own grave.
Yeah.
And someone throws a grenade. There's a big explosion that exhumes the body long enough for them to start swinging the adamantium bones around, and away you go.
I think that's
digging it up. Yeah.
That's an interesting way that you could even still fit in some of the fun alt Wolverine cameos is while they're trying to escape from the TVA, they keep ending like you could even have a Marvel Comics joke there where Deadpool's just like, how many universes is Wolverine in? Like,
yeah. Yeah, like maybe he's trying to find him. He's like, man, I met that brooding asshole in a cell on the TVA. I got to find him. He's going to be the only guy who helped me. We had a bit of a connection. And he goes and tries to find his buddy. Because in the movie as it exists, he goes and meets a bunch of Wolverines, and the one he ends up with is just the only one that doesn't put up a fight.
Yeah.
At least at first, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or can't put up a fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I
will say, for the adamantium bone fight, it's a personal peeve of mine. I know not everyone agrees. Unless it's like a children's animated movie, I hate dancing to pop songs as a joke. I didn't like the ending of Tropic Thunder. I didn't like the ending of 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I didn't like him dancing to the Backstreet Boys in this. Yeah. But that's my own pet peeve, and I realize I'm probably in the minority.
In theory, we're not having it at the beginning of the movie now, so there wouldn't be like the credits going through it. So
Yeah.
I want Deadpool's friends to factor into the end more than just being damsels in distress times 9. I think in the third act, when they get back to Deadpool's universe to stop the Time Ripper and Cassandra Nova, Deadpool and Wolverine need to find themselves outnumbered and in need of help. And then just, of course, Deadpool's team shows up to help because they're his friends, they're his family, and they're also superheroes. So for the most part.
Yeah, that makes that.
You could even have the cab driver run over a Deadpool with his cab. Like you could have a bunch of funny bits with those guys. It would be an opportunity for them to factor into the end. You get to see Colossus go at it with some guys. You'd get to see Negasonic blow up again. Like you could have some fun there. I think that was a big missed opportunity. It felt like a glaring omission from this movie, and I wanted it. So my big fix is just have that factor into the alt Deadpool fight rather than just Wolverine and Deadpool. X-Force shows up to help out.
Yeah.
And then Peter shows up late and still diffuses the situation because he's super popular in every universe.
Yeah. And having, Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead pummeling all these Deadpools sort of justifies why they're able to walk away from that fight and go down into the subway.
Yeah, because there's other people there helping. Exactly.
Instead of this dumb bit where he just like, oh, we all love not Bob. What's his name?
Peter.
Peter. We all love Peter. Like that. I didn't buy that at all. So yeah, I like that. They've got to just contend with Colossus. I have another quick short one then. Sorry, it's a lot of me. I would like 50% less fetishizing the fight that's about to happen. Every time there was going to be a big fight, there was this moment where like they stop, they pose. Deadpool looks at the camera and goes, "Get your special socks out, boys. This is going to be a good, fun one." Like every time they fought, there was this, ooh, they're going to fight. And then off they go. And it would have been nice if a few of them were just more organic instead of this sort of wrestling square off needle drop fight every time. Every time.
Yeah, definitely it doesn't need to be every time. Yeah, I think this movie just needed to be tighter at the end of the day. We really kind of came out the gates swinging on its length, and I think that's kind of working against it because it overstays its welcome a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've tightened it up pretty well. Just like we cleaned up some of the plot and crammed in a couple more fun bits, and I think we did a good job.
Yeah. I have another justification. I don't know where it goes because it kind of my anchor being thing sort of fixes this problem and others. But it was something I'd thought about as I was thinking about fixes. Tell me if you think this is a good justification. When Mr. Paradox is like, oh, well, you get to go to Earth 616 because my superiors have deemed you special for some reason. Sort of an acknowledgement of like, oh, Deadpool is marketable and we need him in the 616 universe, but Blade and Elektra can go. And that also kind of rang hollow and didn't make any sense. Like, at no point is it ever really explained what Mr. Paradox needs his help with, why he'd give him adamantium katanas. Like, what does he need him for?
Yeah.
Why is he there? And again, he's there to pay for his time crimes. Better solution.
Yep.
But B suggestion. This guy is going around pruning timelines indiscriminately. And there's this they don't also explain why every Deadpool from every universe is in the void. Like, why is the Deadpool core there? Did they ever answer that to you guys? No?
Nope.
Here's my justification for why the Deadpool core is there. Especially if we go with the thing of like Deadpool Prime is helping him prune all these things. There's a scene in the first Loki season where, Loki sees some Infinity Gems on someone's desk and goes, oh my God, the Infinity Stones. And the guy goes, oh, yeah. Those are a dime a dozen. And just scrapes them into a desk drawer and closes it. Cause like the TVA is just above Infinity Stones. Like Thanos is a bitch compared to what the TVA can do, right? So if you're going around as an organization pruning all of these timelines, the only being that would really stop you, could have any weight, isn't an Omega level mutant like Wolverine, isn't a powerful being like Thanos. It's the one guy who's aware it's all fiction. And so the Deadpool Corps are in the void because they are the only ones who can like comprehend what the TVA is doing from a metatextual level, and they need them out of there to prune all of these universes, or else the Deadpool is going to be like, well, hey, I'm in a movie. I know what's happening. Is that anything? I don't know, but that was my...
I guess it would be interesting if the metatextualness of Deadpool started eating itself in its final movie, in a way.
Yeah, like it's a liability to the TVA.
It's fun. It totally changes the movie, but it is fun.
I just wanted to justify. That was me trying to figure out why are the Deadpool Corps in the void.
The joke is just that Deadpools are a dime a dozen in the void.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it really matters. The void seems to be sort of like this infinite place full of infinite possibilities. So I don't know. I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking. I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about much about this movie until we started recording the podcast, because we have to, because that's the concept of the show. But yeah, like I don't know, like overall, like I watched a good comedy is kind of like how I felt, and at the end of the day, I think we'd solved the thing that I felt was kind of the biggest speed bump in the whole thing, which was the anchor being like that just made me go, what?
Yeah.
And attacking his initial motivation from a different angle, I think would have removed that speed bump and allowed me to have a little bit more fun just enjoying Deadpool and his fourth wall breaking. I will say though that the fact that it is so blatantly ridiculous is still kind of in keeping with the tone of these movies. So I don't like, if someone were to argue that, it should be kept in for those reasons, I could be convinced.
Yeah, it's not a wholly uninteresting idea. Just like I said at the beginning, you've already got this, time cop authority, multiple universes, variations on multiple universes, timelines on universes on timelines. There's plenty there to work with. You didn't need to manufacture a reason for a timeline to wither.
Yeah. I generally just like we talked about at the beginning, that simplification for comedies works best, and just streamlining things just lets you get to action and comedy faster. So, yeah.
Agreed. We obviously had a lot of big thoughts on this, but so did our listeners. Thank you to everyone who contributed and commented when we solicited these on social media. And of course, the best way to get our attention is to come join our Discord. Please find our website, ihavesomenotes.com, or any of our socials. Get that link to the Discord and come join the chat. We're having a whole lot of fun. We've also heard a whole lot of me. So, Scott, would you mind reading listener comments this week?
Sure. Eddie Gould says, I would rework the first act, bring Peter to the birthday party, drop the Vanessa breakup, keep Marina Baccarin, though she's awesome, but have it start more upbeat in, hey, movie 2 ended on a high note, things are going reasonably well, and now the TVA tells you your universe is dead. Drop the whole car dealership subplot. This kind of folds right into what you were saying there with your fix, yeah. Robin Taylor says, I wonder if it's a meta-commentary on Marvel in the 90s, where when a comic sales slumped, they'd add Wolverine. That character kept Marvel afloat for over a decade. To be clear, our universe's anchor being was clearly Jim Henson, because things went to crap right after he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something we touched on directly earlier on in the show, yeah.
Friend of the show, Olav Rockney, at Hugo Book Club blog, says, I genuinely don't think it's salvageable. Dump all the multiverse nonsense, the pathetic anchor being plot device, scrap all that shit. Part of what made the first Deadpool such a breath of fresh air was that it eschewed the self-serious bombast mode of most superhero fare. The universe is going to be destroyed unless MacGuffin is exactly what Deadpool was a reaction against. So it is a tonal mismatch for this movie. The whole thing doesn't work. Burn it to the ground and start over, making sure Kevin Feige is nowhere near it. Look at the first Deadpool movie. It's a linear plot, not a lot of excess. It's basically a fun little superhero romp with a bad guy. Felt at least like a world that we can recognize as close to our own. Deadpool 3 exists in a CGI landscape of placelessness. The world Deadpool 3 exists in is the aesthetic equivalent of suburbia. It is disconnected, bland, subreal. Olaf had some big thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bold choice to set your movie in the multiversal dump.
Which would have been cooler if there had been more stuff in it, I will say. Like, it seemed, compared to what I remember it looking like in Loki, the void was very sparse in this movie.
Yeah.
And it feels like there was a great opportunity for there to be a bunch of like junk that is referencing like the old Fox movies and stuff. Like you could have had like the wrecked Statue of Liberty from the first X-Men movie. You could have had, I don't know, something from Blade, a Blade thing. I don't know. Like
chunks of Sentinels. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you could have put more like recognizable blink and you'll miss it Easter eggs in the void. And it could have been more interesting.
Yeah. It really looked pretty cool in Loki season 1. And it's disappointing that they threw it all away just for a Mad Max reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you still could have had the Mad Max stuff in there, but it should have looked more like a junkyard and less like a wasteland.
Yeah. And in Loki, it looks like a junkyard. One of the things I'd like to see, I'll throw the one Easter egg I want to see in, and it is a comic book reference.
Sure.
But it was one that I understand why it wasn't in Logan, but then here's your chance to put it in here. So we've all seen Logan. Logan's a great movie. It is loosely based on a comic book called Old Man Logan, where really the only similarity between Logan the movie and Old Man Logan is that it's about Old Man Logan, and in some kind of a wasteland in the future. That's where the similarities end. In the comic Old Man Logan, I forget exactly what his task is, what his call to adventure is. He's got to like, go get some money or do some kind of a job because the United States has been divided up between Doctor Doom, Magneto, and the Hulk. And it's like an apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And the Hulk's kids are like, rent is due. And Old Man Wolverine has to go get the Hulk's kids' rent. Doesn't matter. It involves, this comic book, blind elderly Hawkeye helping Old Man Logan on this task. And they are driving around in the Spider-Mobile. And so if we're already in this void of multiversal dump, and we've got these dumb Mad Max cars, I would have loved to have seen the Spider-Mobile as a reference to Old Man Logan.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
Olev touched on something that started my gears turning because he mentioned that he wanted to dump all the multiverse nonsense. And it feels like to me that now is probably the perfect time for a send up of all the multiverse stuff because of how much Marvel stuff we've gotten, and we've gotten good multiverse stuff, we've gotten bad multiverse stuff, we've gotten multiverse TV shows and multiverse movies, so it's ripe for lampooning. And it occurred to me that like this movie, while it would be the perfect character to lampoon all that, doesn't really do that. It almost seems like it's actually kind of still celebrating multiverse stuff. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I do kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
Like imagine just as an example, like imagine that in the void, they keep setting you up for like this potential cameo and then consistently like dropped as it's nobody or whatever, and just like constantly setting you up like, oh, look who's got all, and they do that throughout the entire movie. I think that'd be like that would in and of itself would be just kind of like blue balling the Marvel fans for an entire movie. Would be a great troll and a great way to take the piss out of the multiverse.
Yeah. And if they did want to do it as a send up parody of multiverse stuff, and as Olav suggests, burn it to the ground and start over, I think the way you do Deadpool 3 multiverse mockery, I don't know what's the answer, but you lose Wolverine and you focus on the Deadpool core.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is just, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but stupid.
Yeah.
You want to know what would have really been a ballsy move is if Deadpool's shenanigans with the TVA accidentally destroyed the golden timeline. He, in saving his universe, he blows up Marvel 616 and then the TVA is left scrambling to try to put it back together. And that's what allows them to reset everything.
And that's why Tony Stark is Dr. Doom.
Yeah. Like that would have been, I mean, in fairness, Dr. Doom, famously, you never see his face. Anybody could play him. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I think if you really wanted them to use this as a way to write their story that has kind of gone off the rails a little bit and fix things so they don't have to worry about the whole Kang Dynasty thing because problems, having Deadpool actually accidentally destroy the core Marvel Cinematic Universe and them have to piece it back together as best they can would have been a way to do that. And it would have been a real ballsy and funny way to do that. And maybe that's what they should have done.
That's what I thought they were going to do. And I don't know if it would have been better or worse, but that is what I thought this movie was going to be. And I kind of like that it instead was this, to varying degrees of sincerity, send off to the Fox era of Marvel movies.
For sure. I'm not unhappy with what we got. I'm just saying this might have been a bolder choice. That's all.
How do you guys feel about like retconning in general? I personally often find, and I'm thinking of Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek 2009. Where a bunch of things were kind of retconned or new skew universes were created. And I generally find myself having trouble with it and just like not enjoying anything that comes after their retcon as much, just because my stupid brain wants to make the canon fit and work together. And when I can't like parse that easily in my brain, I'm just like, whatever, I don't care anymore.
That's why I always said everybody's got their own personal headcanon, and you can choose which Star Wars movies are real and which ones just didn't happen, because for you It's whatever you want it to be. Art is, as Liam put it earlier in this episode, art is subjective. And if there's a part of it that you don't like, you can just throw it away. It doesn't have to stay in your brain.
Yeah, in terms of the Marvel Universe and any potential retcons or retcons that have happened, because there was a period of my life where I bought a lot of monthly issue comics and kept up with the ongoing stories, I'm kind of used to a Marvel Universe that is very interconnected. You don't always know every detail that's going on in the other books because you're not buying every Marvel comic that came out that month. And them kind of having to step over themselves to justify it, either through retcons or big stretches. And whether it fails or whether it succeeds, one of the reasons I like going to every Marvel movie, and I'm kind of on board for all the Marvel stuff, is it is fascinating watching the same problem that plagued Marvel Comics for many, many years plague them now in the movies.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if they succeed, great. If they fail, also kind of funny. It's just, it's so weird that they saw what happened to 50 years of comic book history and are like, well, what if we set ourselves up to do that again over 15 years of movies?
Yeah.
Like,
a tiger don't change his stripes.
yeah, it's so, I don't, whether it's, retconning it like the Ultimate Universe, in the comics, or just like just existing in a state of bogged down canon and lore. It's all good. It's all comic book.
It is very comic book, and comics are weird.
It's a feature,
Herman
not
over
a bug. Sorry, go ahead.
Herman over at Modern Manhood says less exposition and maybe show what happened to Wolverine. I don't know. Maybe make the jokes more accessible instead of having to learn about internal production gossip to catch some of the jokes. I don't know. The movie's a mess.
So
we do learn what happened to Wolverine, but we don't see it. I don't know that we need to see it, though. I think it's almost more impactful having him kind of tell it from his perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, if you saw it, then you would have to get a lot more cameos. Like, got to bring back Famke Janssen, all of them, and I don't know if that was in the cards.
Sort of tying back to what I said in the last comment here, and then going into this one about maybe make the more joke accessible instead about having to learn about internal production gossip to catch the jokes. I can understand people being exhausted by either jokes in reference to fifth wall meta industry knowledge or MCU fictional canonical knowledge. If you are one of those people, I would suggest instead of looking at this movie like, oh my God, I haven't watched a Marvel movie in years, I don't know what the hell's going on, I'd think of it more like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where you're just like, some characters from other fictions are here to play together.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Bill and Ted's, it's like people from history. So like when I hear people be like, oh, I didn't see all the Marvel movies, how am I gonna, I don't know anything that's going on in the Marvels or in Ant-Man. It's like, to me, it sounds like somebody being like, well, I don't know who Napoleon is, so how am I supposed to get all these jokes in Bill and Ted's? And it's like, well, that's part of it. That's what you signed up for. Go watch a different movie.
Yeah. And I mean, there's plenty of jokes that aren't necessarily like, fourth wall jokes about like the business that I think, because I'm sure there's definitely some of them that I caught. There's definitely some of them I didn't. And there was still plenty of stuff that I laughed at, including a joke about how Rob Liefeld can't draw feet.
Oh, so good. I'm pretty sure I was the only one who laughed in the theater at that shoe store sign.
And that's the kind of, when you get it, and there's no feeling like getting it. And when you don't, there's other funny stuff happening. Yeah. Mel Brooks once said that, like, when you're writing a comedy, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You just see what sticks. Yeah. If you throw enough of it, like, stuff is going to start sticking, and the stuff that didn't, people are going to forget about. Yeah. So,
and this movie is pretty dense with jokes. So you do
very dense.
If you didn't laugh at one of them, chances are you were going to laugh at the next one. So
yeah. Ian Wallace says, I'd have put some objects or atmosphere in the foreground or midground of every outdoor shot so that Poole and Wolvie didn't constantly look like they were in the volume. And this is a minor nit to pick, but I'd like to know how Wolverine knew about Deadpool's healing factor when he put all 6 claws into DP's chest 2 minutes after meeting him. He didn't seem to know Deadpool before he chugged the whiskey and passed out and tried to murder him as soon as he woke up. Ian, I think he was just trying to murder him as soon as he woke up and was very surprised that he healed.
Yeah. This is supposed to be the worst Wolverine, so...
Yeah. And Deadpool is very annoying, so I think Wolverine just legitimately was trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on the objects in the foreground and midground. I think the void definitely should have been more dense with stuff. It should have looked more like a junkyard, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can have the scene where you make your Fury Road reference, but...
yeah, I mean,
leave
like,
it
they
there
still...
and move on. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Tarkovsky's Stalker. Check it out. Well, that concludes our Deadpool and Wolverine episode. Thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media, facebook.com/I have some notes, at I have some notes on Twitter, at I have some notes pod on Instagram, or best of all, come join us on the Discord server. You can find a link to that anywhere you find us doing stuff on places you don't need a link to a Discord server. You can also subscribe, rate, and review on Apple or Google or your favorite podcast app. We really do appreciate it.
We also appreciate your actual financial support. If you want to help us keep the lights on around here, you can send us a little bit of your sweet, sweet muns at patreon.com/I have some notes. We appreciate all of our patrons so much. You make it easier to do this. We're not making a ton, but every little bit helps. And if you'd like to help out, once again, patreon.com/I have some notes.
Yeah. And we are going to wrap up season 9 of I Have Some Notes with our next episode, where we are going to pit 3 franchises against one another in an all-out battle for cultural relevance. It's Star Trek, Star Wars, it's Star Wars versus Star Trek versus Doctor Who. So that'll be a good time, so tune in for that next month.
Until then, I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.